On the first day of Muse, Myth My True Love Gave to Me, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, published in 1843.
That it was.
Hey y'all, welcome to our 12-part daily series for the holiday season.
We are going to obviously be covering, well, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
I'm your co-host, Darien.
And I'm DJ.
And let's not waste any time, let's get into it.
Yeah, so for the first episode of the first day of Musemas, we are doing the original.
I did say it, DJ.
You said it, but that was more along the lines of announcing.
Well, I'm going to say on the second day of Musemas.
Okay, well, we got to fucking work that out.
Oh, I thought it was obvious.
I thought that was just the fucking intro here.
Yes, it's like on the first day, and then the second day, I'll say what the second one is.
Wild.
I thought it was charming and endearing.
Wild.
All right, so we got to start off by proper. We have read, listen to the original novella, Charles Dickens' novella, Christmas Carol. DJ, had you ever heard the story before?
Nope.
Me neither.
Not once.
Nope,
No.
not once.
It's always only ever been adaptations, and
Yep.
I've always loved it. I've always loved seeing it. They've always just been super fun.
How did you feel about getting to engage with the original source material?
Oh man, it was great.
Oh, it's so
Are you
good.
kidding me?
Oh,
It
it's
is
so
like,
good.
After listening to it, I'm sitting there like, wow, there really has not been an adaptation that really captures what the fuck this thing does.
Yes, I would agree. Let's do a quick recap. And then I think for this series, I mean, listener, you probably know it's A Christmas Carol, but we're just going to set the groundwork, and I think we're just going to do it once.
Yeah.
Unless an adaptation is particularly wild, in which case
Wildly
we will...
different. But most of the time, I don't think there is one that's like crazy different that's going to like really go off the rails.
Yeah, I think I think that's the point of the series. We will discuss the adaptations and the way they reinterpret the source material, but let's just cover that A Christmas Carol plots. DJ, I'm giving you got 2 minutes on the clock. Ready?
All right.
Go.
Scrooge is a right bastard, right? We see that in the way he treats his nephew, the way he treats his clerk. He's also a debt collector, so that's how he got all of his money. He is visited on the night of Christmas Eve by his old colleague's ghost, Marley. Marley says, I got all these chains, and your chain is much bigger because it's a sins of our, life. You're going to be visited by 3 ghosts in the next 3 days, and you are to, just go along with their plan. And then he disappears, and then the first ghost shows up, goes to Christmas past, goes back, shows the past of Scrooge, his childhood, how he had a lonely one in school, showed his sister, showed his apprenticeship with Fezziwig, and showed his beloved, who I don't know if had a name in the book, but every adaptation says Isabel, so yeah. Isabel.
Let's do that.
And then he realizes, oh shit, man, maybe I kind of fucked my life up a little bit, and then he, is like, stop showing me these. They go, he wakes up, and it's like 2:00 the next night.
Yep.
And then the Ghost of Christmas Present shows up, and he's like, all right, what's good? Let's go check out what's happening.
What's good?
Let's check out what's happening Christmas Day. And what happens Christmas Day is we go and we see Bob Cratchit's family. Bob Cratchit's family's there. They have this lovely, Thanksgiving, or not Thanksgiving, but essentially, right?
Yeah.
Christmas dinner. And it's just beautiful, ornate. And Bob Cratchit wants to toast Scrooge. Wife doesn't like that, shenanigans.
He's a right bastard.
Yeah, because he's a right bastard. And then we go to his nephew's house, his nephew's Christmas party, and they're just like having a good jovial time. And the nephew also, toasts his uncle, and everyone's like, why? He's like, well, if I can toast him, I can toast anybody. I know I'm a good person. Right?
I'm a good person.
Right?
My uncle sucks.
Right. I mean,
whoa.
Was that really 2 minutes?
That was 2 minutes.
That's crazy. I'm not good at summarizing things.
Not when you really, really like it.
No. And then he's like, they start playing like, fun Christmas party games. And then Scrooge starts getting into it, even though nobody can see him because it's, just a vision. And then he just wants to stay longer, but the Ghost of Christmas Present doesn't have long. And so they go back, and then like 3:00 that same night, the Ghost of Christmas Future shows up. And it's like, all right, well, what are you going to show me? And it shows him people who are just essentially scrounging for his wealth, just like ripping his bed sheets off of his dead body. Like it's pretty grotesque. Then they see
Scrooge doesn't realize it's his body first.
And then they go and see a body with like the covers pulled over his face without the comforter and the bed curtains because those people ripped it off. And he's like, well, who's in the body? And then they go and it's like, well, what happened to like, show me somebody who's like had some emotion that I died. And it's Bob Cratchit's family who is pretty stoked that he died because they don't have to pay back the wealth, but they're worried that the debt's going to be transferred to somebody worse. Right.
Yeah.
Like, well, can we get worse than Scrooge? And then it's like, well, the only piece of emotion that somebody felt for me was happiness. That's kind of fucked up. And then they go to, it's like, well, what happened to Tiny Tim? And they go to the graveyard and they see Tiny Tim is dead.
Yeah.
Right. We see, oh shit, well, that's rough. And it's like, well, what happened to my fate? And he points to a grave.
Yeah.
And then the grave like says Ebenezer Scrooge. He's like, well, who was the body? And then he like just points at Ebenezer Scrooge, and Scrooge is like, at this point, fucking emotionally devastated. He grabs the spirit's hand. It's like, please, I'll change. I'll do something. I'll make it right. And he's like, just tell me it's not too late. And then like Scrooge then wakes up and it's Christmas morning.
Yeah.
It's no longer too late. And so he goes out and it's the end. Everybody knows the end, right? And this one is he buys a goose for Bob Cratchit and sends it and like has somebody deliver it. And then he goes to his nephew's house. And then the next day he gives Bob Cratchit a raise and I think partnership, but I'm not super certain.
I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a Christmas Carol.
It's a classic.
It's a classic. You've probably seen
the
it.
classic.
Yes, DJ, as you've said in our previous episode, this is your favorite
100%.
Christmas story.
Oh, yeah.
I am
No contender.
No, I'm extremely fond of it as well. I think it is just good and important.
Yes.
Can I tell you some of the history of the Christmas Carol and beyond its storytelling? So this here is a super, super brief SparkNotes crash course history of like American or Western American Christmas, basically. Britain. And I'm super brief, missing some details. There's more nuance in this. But just some setting about exactly what makes this story remarkable.
Yeah.
So obviously we have Christmas, Christian celebration, celebrates the birth of Jesus Christ, right? Jesus likely, based on history, probably born in the springtime. This is a pretty well-known fact.
Or October 10th, depending on who you ask.
Oh, shut up. So most folks who are like historians, scholars of like theology, like it's generally not in December.
Yeah.
But the holiday is celebrated in the wintertime to correspond with the pre-existing pagan celebrations that were very popular, especially in the Roman Empire. And as Christianity became like practiced by the leadership, they were looking to like, we got to clear out this pagan nonsense. But the people like these parties, so we're just going to say, hey, you can still do your like, I think it was Saturnalia, but I'm not sure, or something like that.
Yeah.
But now it's for Jesus.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's basically what happened. And as Christianity and the empire and conquest and things spread across the Western Europe and stuff all the way through, you would encounter plenty other cultures celebrating winter traditions. We talked about this in our previous bonus episode.
Yeah.
And how that happened and how it's like, why? Okay, I won't get into like why so many places celebrate. Well, it's because wintertime sucks and you're likely to die. So let's bring the light and let's have something to look forward to. And then it helps us literally survive those harsh cold conditions. So you'd have a lot of like incorporating into the traditions of like Yule and things like that for the same reason. Like the Christianification of the great Christian rebrand is what it has been called, citing the podcast Schmanners is something they use and it's really charming. Obviously there's some darker undertones to some of these played out, but that's basically what we get Christmas. And also its pagan roots are why many Christians did not like the celebration of Christmas. Yeah. It was a big party. It was very raucous. It was loud. People drank. It was a feast. And the Puritans were not in on that. So smash cuts to the 1600s when you have the Cromwell Revolution in which the Puritans basically take over the English government and abolish the monarchy. They also ban Christmas.
Ridiculous.
Like any of these celebrations, like you got to be open. No more closing the shops. Like we're not going to celebrate this pagan nonsense. Yeah. Like this should be a day of worship, but absolutely not. And the people didn't love this. Like it was not successful, even though there were fines.
I wonder
and stuff.
why.
Yeah, there were a lot of riots. This didn't last super long. The monarchy was eventually reinstated. Not super long after that. But it did really kind of set a trend.
Damage Christmas a little bit.
Yes, it never fully recovered. And as the following centuries would go by, you would have Christmas celebrations kind of falling by the wayside. Like, the U.S. didn't have them that many. You would still celebrate Christmas, but it became less common for places to be closed necessarily, or these big, like, celebrations. And as the Industrial Revolution really kicks off in, like, Christmas is kind of more of a countryside thing, and it doesn't feel like this is obviously like there's more to it. But basically, by like the 1800s, Christmas looked really, really different than what we see it now. So what changed? Big shout out to Queen Victoria. A lot of what we have now culturally in like Europe, Britain, really in the US, like Queen Victoria, like she was like the icon for this culture stuff, and her husband Prince Albert was, I believe, German. And I know, like, at least he and Germany was celebrating Christmas things. Christmas trees were big in Germany. So he brought that. Queen Victoria had a Christmas tree, and suddenly everyone's like, Christmas. Queen Victoria is also like, let's celebrate with the family, because she had a ton of kids. So you have that, and you have in the Industrial Revolution making it more available, toys and things like that, goods. So enter Charles Dickens.
Yes.
Who had a life. And grew up...
Prolific author.
Yes, but also grew up experiencing firsthand the cultural issues of the time, the socioeconomic disparities, and especially how it harmed children.
Yeah.
Right? And so he wrote other Christmas stories before A Christmas Carol, and he wanted to write something that, like, really raged against the system, essentially. And originally going to talk about, like, hey, why are we mistreating kids? Like, why are we forcing, like, he would tour, like, coal, some sort of mine and stuff, and it was like... He's like, this is wretched. But he ended up not writing that. He ended up deciding, well, I should channel this into something else. So he writes A Christmas Carol, which is very much creating this idea of Christmas that didn't necessarily exist yet, but started to. Christmas carols had just started coming back into public consciousness. Like, you had wassailing used to be a big thing and had really been forced out of fashion. So Christmas carols was coming up. The idea of, like, playing games and partying and obviously telling ghost stories was something that was becoming popular to do at Christmas time, which is why ghosts appear in A Christmas Carol. It was part of that tradition. We talked about that when we did
when we watched it.
The Woman in Black. That was the Halloween one we did with Skylar Barsanti last year.
I know. I just don't remember like anything about it.
The book, it sets up, or the radio play I listened opens up with him at Christmas time. The family's telling ghost stories. Oh, come, Papa, tell a ghost story. And he's like, no, I mustn't. It's that.
Oh, okay.
So this is common, but essentially, and he didn't invent Christmas, but Charles Dickens presented this.
Shape it a little bit.
He helped shape it a lot, because the Christmas Carol, its first edition, sold out by Christmas Eve and was available 127 more times in the following year as different. People loved it.
It's great.
And he would start like performing it and like doing readings of it every holiday, and it.
God, I would fucking love to sit down and listen to Charles Dickens read.
Yeah,
A Christmas
wouldn't
Carol.
that be?
Sounds awesome.
No, and it really instated this idea that like Christmas as a time for, it could be a time for family celebration, could be done in the city and not just in the country. You could find Christmas spirit there, but also really enforce the idea of giving. The idea that those with much should give to those with little, because it is the just and good thing to do for your fellow man. In fact, so much so that there was a lot of like prominent figures of the time did cite like they had chosen to give because of A Christmas Carol. Family gatherings also became like a big thing, because that's what you see at A Christmas Carol, like the Cratchits being together, but also the nephew inviting the friends over, and like the idea of like you should get together with family, like let's do that. And it just was this, it'd come out at a perfect time, and not by accident. Dickens did this on purpose. Mid-Victorian like Christmas was really starting to tap into like what people wanted. Yeah, and so by writing this story about Christmas, it just typed into the zeitgeist and like flung through like, this is Christmas. It also popularized the phrase Merry Christmas. He didn't invent it. It had been like recorded in a letter in like 1534, but Dickens putting it in the story became like more popular for folks to say Merry Christmas, like as the form of greeting. Yeah. It just, historian Ronald Hutton noted that like Dickens linked worship and feasting with like a social context of reconciliation.
Mhm.
So like one more thing I want to touch on is how there's very little. I mean, there's no Jesus in this.
No, yeah,
It's a Christmas carol.
there's not a lot of.
It's like, what is the meaning of Christmas?
Yeah, and so like I guess like the only thing you could point to being like, oh, well, maybe is Marley. Right?
Yeah, Marley being sent, being like, I'm being punished for the sins, and that's a very like Christian thing.
Well, it's also it's interesting because like Scrooge's like, well, you were just doing business, and then Marley's like, well, mankind is our business.
Yeah.
It's a good line.
It is a good line. There's a lot of fucking great lines.
There's a lot of great lines throughout this whole thing. If you guys have not read or listened to this story, go and listen to or read the original written by Charles Dickens. No. It's great.
Hey, I think Dickens is like a good writer or something.
Phenomenal.
But Dickens really didn't create it, but really helped popularize the notion of secular Christmas.
Yeah.
Separating, because there is still the notion of like goodwill towards men and that idea of like giving outside. I mean, Scrooge is, I think maybe that's hold on, I'm going to put a pin in that thought because I think that'll help later. But basically what I mentioned earlier, I love secular American Christmas. Like that's my jam.
It's great. I love it.
The vibes of a Christmas Carol. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like Dickens really did help introduce the notion that like Christmas is something to be celebrated outside of religious piety, essentially. And it merely helped me with Queen Victoria, like that stuff, this family thing, this giving, this thing. And so one cannot undervalue the impact of A Christmas Carol, not just as like, what a good story and we keep adapting it, on the actual way we celebrate Christmas now. The way we do Christmas and the fact that we have Christmas as we know it. Mm-hmm. Without the Christmas Carol, it's impossible to say how many of those Christmas traditions that were like becoming popular in the Victorian era would have gone by the wayside with the next era and the 1900s without this story that people loved. And there's a reason and then there's a reason we have the idea of like celebrating like, oh, an old-fashioned Dickens Christmas, because it presents this idea of Christmas that we want to replicate. Yeah. And without that, maybe we don't have it quite the same way.
I think the shocking part is that it came over across the sea. Over here to America, right?
So, I mean, by that point, like it's the Victorian era, the Industrial Revolution, but you have communication, like
it's slower. There, but it's not like, I mean, sure, the book's going to come over, but the fact that it blew up as well over across in America rather than just sticking on like in England. And as you said, I don't think Americans are really going to be super swayed by what the fuck Victoria's doing.
Actually, we were.
Ridiculous.
Wow, no.
Believe.
Americans, like well-to-do Americans, like they wanted to like, we had moved past the revolution. Like she wasn't viewed. Oh God, this is a whole other thing. I mean, she was like the monarch of England, but enough time had gone past that it was more like this pinnacle of like refined culture, regality, like, and so you get woodcuts showing Queen Victoria and Prince Albert at Christmas time, and like well-to-do Americans wanted to replicate that. It became like this like social like, oh, we could be like them, and isn't this like so fun and grand? And then that would go down through the culture of like, oh, can we replicate what these other like well-to-do?
I stand by my eye roll.
I think you're totally fair, but so at the same time, and then so it was like that zeitgeist had spread across the Atlantic, and you had that in like America too, was this idea of like Christmas, and then we just really liked A Christmas Carol also. Yeah. And so you get that. But yeah, no, you cannot underestimate the impact of Queen Victoria. Like this, all the things about the monarchy, you're like, woof. But as like this cultural trendsetter, her and Prince Albert, like, never had it, never gonna have it again. Like this impacts. Hard to replicate. So Christmas Carol.
It's wonderful.
It's just wonderful. I'm trying to figure out like what I want to talk about the book. Do you want to talk about the ghosts?
Love the ghosts.
The ghosts.
The ghosts are all so much fun.
DJ, which is your favorite ghost?
From the book, I might have to give it to Future.
Really? Christmas Yet to Come.
Christmas Yet to Come in the book is just super interesting, right?
Yeah.
Very just like...
Because here, I actually have a copy of the text. I can read a description.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about like...
But it's just like, when I say that nobody's done it justice, like at the very least adaptation wise, this is one of the points that like really points to, or this is one of like the, you know, things that people try to adapt that they always change in their adaptations. And like we, you know, talked about
We'll
it while
talk
we were
about that,
watching
yeah.
it. But in a lot of adaptations, well, future's always, you know, the Grim Reaper, evil, you know, not fun. Not just, you know, it's scary. You're worried about it. And it's solely based on the idea that it's always showing his death.
Yeah. So do you want me to read the description?
Absolutely.
Should we maybe read the description of all the ghosts?
Yeah, we will.
Oh, let's just start it. This is our episode. We can do whatever we want. Scrooge looked about for the ghost and saw it not. At last, stroke ceased to vibrate. He remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley and lifted up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. And then we cut to stave 4, the last of the spirits. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for the very air through which the spirit moved seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible, save for one outstretched hand. But for this it would have been difficult to detach its figure from the night, separate it from the darkness by which it was shrouded. He felt that it was tall and stately when it came beside him, and that its mysterious presence filled him with a solemn dread. And I think famously, this spirit doesn't speak.
No.
So Scrooge is like, am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? Said Scrooge. The spirit answered not, but pointed onward with his hand. And so it is...
It's just this black thing with one hand coming out pointing.
Yeah, just like, all right, let's go.
And it's great. I like it a lot because it's mysterious.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's the future. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
you're always worried about it. There's dread shrouded over the future, even in your day-to-day life.
Gloom and mystery.
Yeah, and so when you live a life like Scrooge, gloom and mystery is what awaits you in the future.
Yeah, I think
you don't
that's
know
a good
what the fuck's
point.
going to happen. And so when we get to see the future Christmas that he presents, we don't. Granted, what we see is not happy, right?
No.
We don't see anything happy. But I don't think that makes it inherently evil or sinister.
No, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come isn't, I would argue.
Yeah, no, and especially in the original writing, clearly Dickens didn't mean for it to be sinister in any way.
I think it's scary, but that's not.
But that's just kind of like, the future is scary. Come on.
Yeah.
And when he sees his grave, and then like after the grave he goes back to the body and realizes that it's his body, when he bends down in front of the ghost, like grabbing the ghost's hand and is like, please, I can change it, like please let me know if it's not too late. And the ghost is still just like sitting there pointing, but he starts to like, you know, shake because he's also like he feels empathy towards this.
Yeah, I'm looking
towards
for
Scrooge.
Yeah, I'm looking for that passage. So when Scrooge realizes, yeah, like you said, DJ, so they're at the gravestone, he points at the tomb, and Scrooge sees his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay in the bed? He cried upon his knees. The finger pointed from the grave to him and back again. No, spirit. Oh, no, no. The finger was still there. Spirit, he cried, tight clutching at its robe. Hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been for this to be, but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? For the first time, the hand appeared to shake. Good spirit, he pursued, as down upon the ground he fell before it. Your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I may yet change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. The kind hand trembled. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all year. I will live past, present, and in the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shout the lessons they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on the stone. In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It shot to free itself, but he was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the spirit's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.
Yeah.
Yes,
Great.
And the bedpost was his own. He woke up in bed.
Yeah. And it's, again, like, it just, like, I think that is far more interesting than when the spirit pushes him into the grave.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about.
We will,
but it's even the way the kind hand trembled.
This spirit is not sinister. The spirit feels for this guy and is showing him this is what's going to happen if you don't change your ways. And I mean, clearly Scrooge sees that. You can tell that he's desperate to, not have this kind of destiny. It's a very sad and lonely one. And once he realizes that's what's awaiting for him, he's like, this is not okay.
Yeah, it's like, I don't
And like
want
tacking on to like the regrets of his past and what he's missing out on his present, this sad future is the fucking nail in the coffin.
Yeah, seeing a future where people are celebrating his death, no one misses him, they just take him stuff. Like, there was no one to mourn him. And also, like, the death of Tiny Tim, the, like, son of his employee.
Which like Scrooge got attached to.
Yes, like, from seeing him.
From essentially seeing him and the way that, like, his family crowded, like, you know, was there and being family. And, like, Tiny Tim there. And it's like, well, what's wrong with Tiny Tim?
Yeah, it is.
Is he going to live?
Yeah,
you know?
so, yeah, well, let's talk about The Ghost of Christmas Present.
Which is...
who I think is my favorite. I love The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come.
It's my favorite in the adaptations, but is it your favorite in the adaptations or the book, Darien? Can you separate that? I will say it is the most true one out of all of them.
I do like The Ghost of Christmas Present as the vibes. This dude brings the biggest holiday vibes.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just so fun. He is described as very Father Christmas.
Yeah.
Like that is the vibe.
Yep.
And talks about how he has
motherfucking Kris Kringle, bro.
Yep. Has like 1,800 siblings that Scrooge has reproached, right? Because
1,859.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find the...
And Scrooge has reproached however long he's been alive.
Yeah, he's like, you've not sought any of them out. So he talks about when Scrooge sees him, and the ghost is described as a giant, but I don't think it's a giant as in, like, massive, filling up the whole room, just like a giant of a man, literally larger than life, and he's surrounded by a gorgeous feast of all the goods of the holidays.
Yeah.
And so Scrooge comes in, and Scrooge entered timidly and hung his head before the spirit. He was not the dodged Scrooge he had been. The spirit's eyes were clear and kind. He did not like to meet him. He did not like to meet them. I am the ghost of Christmas Present, said the spirit. Look upon me. Scrooge reverently did so. It was clothed in a simple green cloth or mantle bordered with white fur. The garment hung loosely on the figure that its capacious breast was bare, as if disdaining to be warded or concealed by any artifice. Its feet, observable beneath the amber folds, were also bare, and on its head wore no other cover than a holly wreath, and set there with shimmering icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free as the genial face, its sparkling eye, its opened hand, its cheery voice, its unconstrained demeanor, and its joyful air. Girded around its middle was an ancient sabre, but no sword was in it, and the ancient sheath was eaten up with rust.
Love it.
I love it. And there's the symbolism
design.
of the holly, the icicles, this like, we get some strong pagan symbolism going on with the Father Christmas aesthetic, and I am here for
Father Christmas.
it. Like, and I love the whole like, oh, he's got like the scabbard around his waist, but there's no sword, and the scabbard, or there's the belt, there's no sword, and the scabbard's green, because it's like the idea of like the peace that should come with Christmas. No more warfare, no more need for this. It's been long gone.
Yeah.
Because of what this spirit is meant to represent, not necessarily what it is in human world, but what it should represent. This literal peace on earth. Mm-hmm. And just so giving. I think, DJ, you talked about how, when we were talking about the book, he's got like this lantern or some sort of thing he's carrying. Staff?
I have no idea.
There's something that when they go by, he like sprinkles on.
Yeah, he. I don't know. I don't recall it coming from a staff. I just know he like sprinkles something on it, right?
Yeah,
something on the food as they're going by.
Yeah, and on the houses and on people, and he's like, oh, does it make the food taste better? And Scrooge is like asking, like, what are you doing? Are you changing it? He's like, not really, but it does taste better. And it's like the spirit of Christmas, of the season.
It'll make a Christmas meal taste. It'll make any meal given taste better, especially to the poor.
Yes, that's the thing that Dickens keeps coming back to, because that's like his theme.
Yeah,
it's like the idea of giving. And how something is better when it is given.
Yeah.
And that is supposed to be the not when it is like received, but when it is given. The act of giving, the act of freely, and how it's bright, and like the guests, because Scrooge shows him the Cratchits, and they have so very little, and they've saved so hard, but you get the Cratchit family, and their eldest daughter has come back from her apprenticeship or wherever she is working, and they're so happy that she's there, and we get Bob Cratchit coming back with Tiny Tim from church, and it's all of this stuff, and the family has so little, but they're so happy. It's showing that idea of like celebrating with your loved ones and being there together. And Scrooge is watching, and like you said, DJ, he grows very attached to Tiny Tim. I think
He's
because
Tiny Tim, and he's like,
I think because he sees himself in this boy who doesn't have a lot, but has his family, which is something that Scrooge, when he was that age, didn't really have.
yeah.
And so he's like, "What?" And he asks the spirit, like, "Oh, what will happen to Tiny Tim?" And the spirit's very like solemn. He's like, I fear that if things do not go unchanged, there will be an empty seat at the table next Christmas."
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, oof.
And with it's not directly said what Tiny Tim has.
Yeah.
But we believe it's malnutrition, since it's one of the few things that's like common at the time and can be changed with a little bit of help.
Yeah, if he had like tuberculosis, like I don't know if anything can be done.
Yeah.
Sorry, gang.
Chances are he's not living in the next like week, and he's gonna spread it to like his other siblings.
Yeah, like it's obviously not something that is
the
contagious.
Cratchit family is ending here.
Yeah, it is like there is no clear answer as to what ails Tiny Tim, but like you said, like I've heard like, oh, it's likely like his overall state of unhealth is really being exacerbated by malnutrition because he is the youngest, and the family is struggling to provide, and they just cannot.
Yeah. And
whatever is like his other like underlying health issues are being exacerbated because he's not getting what he needs to grow and develop and be healthy. Like that's, I think, why he has the crutch.
Yeah.
Because his body, he does not have the strength to support his own body. And it's tragic and it's sad. And it also is like, Cratchit is like, oh, I want to toast my employer because, like, oh, the founder of the feast. And Mrs. Cratchit's like, bullshit, the founder of the feast. No, we scrounge for this feast. Yeah, he pays you, but, like, we had to save and pinch and everything. Like, he takes advantage of you. He's selfish and greedy, and he could be paying you more.
Yeah.
Or basically is the vibe. It's like, you are worth more than what he gives you.
Yeah.
But also it's like, it's 1800s. It's not like Bob Cratchit can even go find a better paying job. He has to work.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. And then, like you said, he goes to see his nephew, and they're all having such a great time. And his nephew, who has invited him to every Christmas.
Every Christmas.
And it's this moment where he's like, we were just doing this backwards, but Scrooge, I think, for the first time sees his nephew and is like, this is my sister's son.
Yeah.
Something he's not really ever clicked with. And he's like, I don't get to celebrate Christmas with my sister. I could be celebrating it with her son, and I have chosen not to.
Yeah.
So then, and I think the Ghost of Christmas Present is getting older through the evening, right?
Yeah, he's getting progressively older, and he like by the time he looks back at him, the reason that they can't stay long is because the Ghost of Christmas Present is in fact dying.
Yeah.
He's like, let's stay for just like 30 more minutes. And he's like, and as he turns back, he realizes that he's a withered old man, essentially.
Yeah, he's like, hey, man, and I think that's...
my time on this earth is brief, or something. My time in this world is brief.
Yeah, I think that's why The Ghost of Christmas Present is my favorite, because I think that's a really cool...
It's another thing that's like never really shown in adaptations.
Yeah, I think that's a cool, like, just idea. And so we've now let's start with the first of these three ghosts that are shown, the Ghost of Christmas Past, which is a weird one.
It is.
Weird ghost. Let me see. Okay. So at first, okay. So the curtains of his bed were drawn aside, I tell you, by a hand. Not the curtains at his feet nor the curtains at his back, but those to which his face was addressed. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge, staring up into a half-recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with an unearthly visitor who drew close to him, as close to it as I am to you, and I am standing in the spirit at your elbow. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child, as an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receding from view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, yet its face had not a wrinkle on it, the tenderest bloom on its skin. Its arms were very long and muscular, the hands the same, as if it were hold an uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were, like those upper members, bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist bound a lustrous belt, with the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh holly in its hand, and in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was was the crown on its head was sprung a bright, clear jet of light, by which all of this was visible, and was doubtless the occasion of its using in its duller moments for a great extinguisher for a cap, which now hung under its arm. Can you picture it? I can't picture anything by that description. Like, don't ask me to draw this. I can't tell you what it looks like.
It's the reason why it's probably the most wild. It's like wildly different in like every adaptation.
Yeah, because like, what is the... Hey, Chuck, what the fuck?
The biggest thing that comes to mind is that it's like, I don't know, like a 4 foot tall person, you know? It's
I get.
It's an adult in the body of a child. It's like I don't know, like you hear those people say that's like, oh, this kid has like wizened eyes or something like that. And like, yeah.
An old soul.
So it's like, that's how I kind of imagine it. And then it's like, you tack on a little more. It's always saying that's like young but old at the same time.
Yeah, strong and muscular. I mean, and here's the thing. I love it because if you're going to do ghost shit, they can be weird.
Make them incomprehensible.
And as a ghost should be. Especially if it goes to the past, which I think the past is good because the past is like saying it's like a child, but yet not like a child, like old, and you're viewing it from a distance. Like, I feel like that's what the past is. Where sometimes the past, what your memory, whatever it is,
it's an old memory, but it's an old memory of a young you.
Yes, it's like a young you, and it sometimes feels a lot closer than it truly is, but the description of its like limbs being so strong makes sense because carrying the past is a heavy burden.
Yeah.
And then the light and the holly and also summer flowers. And it's just like amazing.
Love it.
Love it. And it's just a bright like light on its hat. It's like, why? I don't know. But it's got like another hat that it's like, okay, I'll put this on. It's trippy. And it shows Scrooge just, I think you talked about, so it shows him the past where he's like a child and all the other kids are going home for school, but he's not. He has to stay. And then we see several years later where he once again is the only kid staying home, staying at school for the holidays. But all of a sudden his little sister comes bursting in and is like, hey, Dad said you can come home. I've come to get you.
Yeah.
Dad's so much nicer than he used to be.
So much nicer than he used
what
to
the
be.
Fuck?
Very worrisome.
No, okay. But then we jump to like Fezziwig and stuff and how his employer, who he apprenticed under, was like always threw the biggest Christmas parties. Always had the best time throwing it.
Yeah.
And then we meet like Isabel, whom he like loved. And then we cut to like when they broke up. And basically her whole thing is like, hey, so now you're wealthy and this is really all you care about. And so I'm here to let you out of your commitment to me. He's like, well, I've never asked to be let out. She's like, yeah. But like, cards on the table, my dude. I know if we met now, you wouldn't go after me. You would not pursue me. If you met now with me still being poor and you being wealthy, you would not want me. He does not argue with that. So she's like, later. Like, listen, you'll be sad for a time, but you'll get over it as an unworthy business venture.
Yeah.
And she dips, which respect.
Yeah.
Isabel, or again, she doesn't have a name.
No.
I'm like, no.
Well, it's just Isabel.
Isabel. We're going to call her Isabel.
We don't know if she has a name. We don't remember.
I'm sure she doesn't because she's just described as the young maiden. Nope, it's just described as like the maiden, the woman. But yeah, her name is not presented. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a choice. I don't feel like that's an oversight. That is clearly
has a name either up until the very end.
Cratchit doesn't have a name until we see him in the present. Like he's just called the clerk.
In these, like it seems like in these first two, he didn't want to get in the first two staves. He didn't want to give everybody names.
Yeah, no one like it's just the nephew, and it's literally just the clerk. Like we don't know his name is Bob Cratchit until later. Yeah. So it is like I wonder if this was like it's an interesting thing that she doesn't have a name, despite clearly being so important, and how like Scrooge is so upset to watch this like breakup play out again. And then let me talk about this next part, which I fucking love. Oh, brutal, cold fucking blooded. The Ghost of Christmas Past does not fuck around. Okay,
does not stop. Is showing, and at this point, Scrooge is already like, well, he already realizes he fucked up there.
Yeah, he's like,
he realizes that shit. I should have fucking realized what the fuck was going on. I should have realized what I had. And then the Ghost of Christmas Past decides to show him what Isabella's up to. Now.
Yeah.
And she has.
Wait.
Like,
may I?
Oh, yeah,
I'm so
go
sorry.
ahead. Read the passage you have in front of you.
Yep. So he's like, so she's like, I'm out of here. Unprofitable when you awoke. May you be happy with the life you've chosen. She left him and they parted. Spirit, said Scrooge, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why did you like to torture me? One shadow more, exclaimed the ghost. No more, cried Scrooge. No more. I do not wish to see it. Show me no more. But the relentless ghost pinned him in both arms and forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene.
Fucking full Nelson.
Basically,
Like, watching this motherfucker.
And what happens next is, so they're in another scene, another place, a room, not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like the last that Scrooge believed it was the same, until he saw her, now a comely matron, sitting opposite her daughter. The noise in this room was perfectly tumultuous, for there were more children there, and then Scrooge's agitated state of mind could count. And unlike the celebrated herd in the poem, so that this is a poem, flashback to whatever, but he sees he sees her with her daughter and all of her kids, and they are celebrating and wildly and just loud and rambunctious and happy. And Scrooge is like, oh, like how I'm like what I wouldn't give to like
what I wouldn't give now to have this.
Yeah. But now a knocking was heard at the door, and such a rush intimately ensued that she was with laughing face and plundered dress was borne towards the center of a flushed and boisterous group, just in time to meet the father, who came home attended by a man laden with Christmas toys and presents. Then the shouting and the struggling and the onslaught that made the defenseless porter. They scaled him with chairs for ladders and dived into his pockets to spoil of his brown paper parcels. And they're just like kicking his legs in irrepressible affection, shouts of wonder and delight with every package received. And they were just like, all the kids so happy. And now Scrooge looked on more intently than ever, with the master of the house, having his daughter leaning fondly at him, sat down with her and her mother at his own fireside. And when he thought that such another creature, quite as graceful and full of promise, might have called him father, and had been a springtime in the haggard winter of his life, his sight grew very dim indeed. Belle!
So he says it?
Yeah, Belle, said the husband, turning to his wife with a smile. I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon. Who was it? Guess. How can I? Don't I know? In the same breath, laughing as he laughed. Mr. Scrooge. Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, and I could barely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear. And there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe. Spirit, said Scrooge in a broken voice, remove me from this place.
Fucking love it.
She does have a name. It's very blink if you miss it, but the husband calls her. I think that I actually respect Dickens' writing choice. I think that's intentional. I'm going to choose to believe it's intentional. Scrooge never uses her name. She's just the woman, her. He can't bear to even think or remember her name because it causes him too much pain.
Yeah, there's a reason why he shut it out. And now he's a broken man in front of the spirit.
Yeah, but the husband is like, oh, Belle. Her name is probably Isabel, but he calls her Belle. Of course he does.
Yeah.
And so I think that is an intentional choice. Like, we get to know her name. But then the Cratchit and the nephew don't have names earlier because Scrooge doesn't care enough to even think about those names. It's not till later when they start to become.
This.
Yeah, it's not till after this when they start to become, like, after his experiences with the ghost, so that they start to become people to him. But yeah, he doesn't think her name because it is too painful.
Yeah,
and it is like, ugh. But that's not enough to change him. Oh, should we talk about Marley?
Yeah,
because there are four ghosts.
Yeah,
There's also Marley.
Four, but we were going through it.
We're doing back. We're going backwards.
Again, this is tacking on to why I think that there has been no adaptation that does this justice. Mm-hmm. Granted, we have not watched even all the ones that we are set to watch for this 12 Days of Musemas. But so far, nothing's done this motherfucker justice.
It's I think there are ones I like him, but it's like so wild.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, like the sister. Very rarely do we get the sister.
Very rarely. The first one we saw was yesterday. At the very least, the first one I saw. Didn't even know she had a sister until we listened to it, right?
Yeah.
And then, yesterday.
Maybe hold on. Maybe we should put a pin in discussing like what we don't get. Like maybe we should just focus on what is in the story. Otherwise, we'll be here for much longer than I intended. Marley. You loved the chains, DJ. Do you want to talk about Marley now?
I thought okay, so Marley, everybody knows Marley,
partner,
right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows the partner at this point. If you don't, he's, Scrooge's old partner that died 7 years in the past on Christmas Eve. He shows up and he's covered in chains, and the chains are the sins that he made himself in life.
Keys and lock boxes on him.
Keys, lock boxes, cash boxes, everything about it. And they're made while he was alive.
Yeah, link by link, chain by chain.
And he tells Scrooge, when I died, your chain was at least as big as this, and that was 7 years ago. If you do not change, your change will be much larger. I think it's just a really cool way of doing sense. I think it's fun, right? I think it's just like a real cool representation to be like, you were just kind of a shitty person in life, so now you're doomed to walk around with big, heavy fucking chains all the time.
Yeah, I love it. I love the line you mentioned earlier where he's like, oh, well, you were just doing business. Mankind. Here it is, yeah. But you were always a good man of business, Jacob, faltered Scrooge, who now began to apply this to himself.
Yeah, exactly.
Business, cried the ghost, wringing its hands again. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were not but a drop of water in the ocean of comprehension of my business.
Yeah, it's great. It goes to show that it's like this business that he's in is going to lead him to despair.
Yeah, like you are fucked, dude. Like, I'm here to let you know you need to get your act together or you will be worse than me.
Which, like, this is why I think that they were at the very least, friends. Because an acquaintance wouldn't fucking come and tell you this shit.
That's true. I think they did respect each other.
I think even outside of respect, I don't think somebody who just respects someone will come and warn someone, hey, your afterlife is going to be shit if you don't change it.
That's true. It is interesting because we don't know we don't know how
I can
Marley
respect
died.
somebody, but I won't care enough to tell them, to change themselves.
Yeah, I guess
there are definitely times.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because it's like Scrooge doesn't care about anybody. So, but it's like maybe Marley only grew that way.
Maybe he only cared about Scrooge, or maybe Scrooge only cared about Marley because Marley helped him make money.
Yes.
So like they had a partnership. At some point, you got to grow somewhat close to them. I think it's just a little more than respect. I think they were friends. They hung out a little bit, you know?
But like what we know with Belle and her husband, where he mentions like, oh, he saw Scrooge. He's at the office still working. His partner's close to death. This is probably the night Marley died. Scrooge wasn't with him.
Yeah.
Like he was still working while Marley died alone. At the house where Scrooge lives in now, I think. I think he moved into Marley's house, if I remember correctly.
Did he move into Marley's house?
I'm pretty sure it's Marley's house that he moved into. Because I think Marley had no one else to leave anything to. So it's like, I also would say that like maybe Marley feels responsible because they were both in this business together. And it's not like he made Scrooge what he was. We know he was already like that when Belle dumped him.
Yeah.
But Marley may looks back and Scrooge does not know the true horror of what he has done, what he and Marley did, and Marley does now, and maybe there is a sense of responsibility, or if I can help. It also is like maybe if Marley can help Scrooge, he can somehow help himself. Like maybe he can make up for it because it's too late.
Maybe Marley saw Scrooge as a friend, and Scrooge did not see Marley as a friend.
I could also believe that.
Right, I would believe that.
The story's also funny.
So
Can we talk about that? Because so here's the thing. So he's like, this will be your fate. And Scrooge is like, oh, begging him, like, please help me, please help me. He's like, there is no light part on my penance, pursued the ghost. I am here tonight to warn you, and that you have a chance and a hope of escaping my fate, a chance and a hope of my procuring Ebenezer. Like, he's like, I set this up for you. You were always a good friend to me, said Scrooge. Thank you. You'll be haunted, resumed the ghost, by 3 spirits. Is there a chance and a hope? And is that the chance and a hope you mentioned, Jacob? It is. I think I'd rather not. He's like, nope, you will get them and each expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over with, Jacob? Expect the second the next night at the same hour. The third the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more. Okay, we're going to put a pin in that just for a second. And talk about the fact that there were other ghosts that Scrooge sees when Marley leaves. Because he looks out the window and he looks down.
And he sees like other people.
All the ghosts in purgatory.
Yeah, and like they're all trying to inform their loved ones, inform the living of like what's going on. Like just shit like that, reaching out, trying. Yeah. It's great.
It's great. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might even be guilty governments, were linked together. None were free. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat with a monstrous iron safe attached to his ankle, who cried piteously, being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant whom sat below on the doorstep. the misery with all of them was clearly that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever.
Yep.
So it's like I love that line very much because it's like, hey, in life they had the power, the opportunity to do good, to help others.
Yep.
And now it's too late and there is nothing they can do.
Yeah.
Not to save themselves, not to help others. And so it also underlines like what Marley is doing is a big deal. Like he is trying to help Scrooge in a way that these other spirits are not able to help anybody. And that is so interesting.
Mm-hmm. I like it a lot. I think it's much better than I think it's a much better punishment than just like being tortured for all eternity.
Yeah, right.
So now you're weighed down by chains made from your own sins while watching the people you love.
Or even people you didn't know because the wealthy
You're just
ghost.
watching just everything.
The suffering that you can't stop.
It's rough. It's just not good.
And I think Dickens does a really good job of like he has like a point. He is writing this for a reason, and I think he does a really good job in that reason, getting to the heart. Like, and I'm sure some people will read it like, "Oh, beat me over the head with it," but like, yeah,
care about your fucking fellow man.
Yeah,
damn it.
care about other people. Damn it, you have all this money. Do help someone else who's struggling. God damn.
Yeah.
Especially like we are in the Industrial Revolution in England. There's no pull yourself up by your bootstraps bullshit. There's still not now, but my point being, like, come on. And earlier, like, oh, God, real quick, can we talk about like what is maybe, I think our favorite line in like a dark humor kind of way?
Yeah, what is it?
It's when the two folks come to collect and they're like, oh, we're raising for the poor to help them. And Scrooge is like, oh, are the jails all closed? Oh, no, the jails are still there. Well, the debtors' houses, the workhouse is still there. Unfortunately, they are. Oh, good. I thought they went out of business. Well, we're trying to help. Some people would rather die than go to those places. Then they should die and decrease the surplus population.
Yeah, it's great because then it's used against him later.
Yes, when he sees Tiny Tim.
When he's worried about Tiny
like,
Tim,
what will happen
and then
to Tiny
Christmas
Tim?
goes to Christmas present, like, well, I suppose he'll die and decrease the surplus population.
Yeah, or he's like, well, shouldn't he just die? And it's like, oh,
yeah,
got him.
great.
And all of a sudden, Scrooge is like, empathy. He's
man,
like,
I'm
he's
a
like
jackass.
said, I'm a jackass. He says this, but like, it's like how Cratchit and his nephew don't have names.
Yeah.
He's saying this and has this is not an excuse for his bullshit behavior, but that is the way Scrooge is. He has no context for what that really means. What the idea of children dying, of people dying. Like, he doesn't see it. Now, you shouldn't need ghosts to haunt you to make you be a better person.
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that it does show that there is a capacity to learn. And I think that's what Scrooge has. And I think we talked about DJ where you made the comment where like Scrooge needed all four of the ghosts.
Yeah.
Because just Marley showing up wasn't enough.
Just Marley showing up wasn't enough. Just the Christmas past showing him his regret wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. Just the Christmas present showing him what he was missing out was not enough. Mm-hmm. He had to see all four and see what that shit's going to do to him to tie it with a bow. Yeah,
to really drive it home. And because he never says like, oh, because he tells the spirit of the past, I don't want to see anymore. It hurts too much.
Yeah,
and he's
I don't want to see anymore. So if it just stopped at past, he would have done the same shit he always done. He would have buried himself in his work.
Dream.
Yeah. Would have buried himself in his work and just went on his day.
Whatever. Like, oh, my memories suck. I'm just going to keep working. And the president's like, oh, you missed out on this fun. But he's like, but so what? Like
I missed out on the fun, but now I've missed out on it, so I can't do anything about it.
That's exactly. I think you talked about that, DJ. So let's go back to. So there's time travel in this movie.
Yeah. Okay.
This story.
Yeah. So the story takes place across 3 days. The original story does. Right. We have the Ghost of Christmas Past showing
Christmas Eve.
Yeah,
no.
Yeah. I think it might be the 23rd, and so it shows up on like 1 a.m. of the 24th.
Yeah. Hold on. What is? Yeah.
Right, because it's Christmas Past, so it's before Christmas. Is what I've always assumed, right?
So it's hard because Marley is visiting, and it is the day before Christmas.
Okay, so it's the day. So it'll show it when the clock tolls 1 that night. So that's 1 a.m. Christmas morning.
Yeah.
And then we go through and we see Christmas Past.
Yeah.
And then it's
the
like
next night.
So it's 2 a.m. the day after Christmas.
But people are still celebrating Christmas. So I think that's what we're seeing is the Christmas night celebrations at 2 a.m.
And so we see that.
1 a.m. still.
Yeah, 1 a.m. And then it's
The third.
midnight on the
Yeah.
26th, and now it's too late.
Yes, and that is it. It is too late.
It is too late, and and with Christmas future, it's showing that it's too late to change.
Yes, like
And-
when you let the future come, it is too late.
Yeah, and so we see how desperate he becomes, and he's genuinely a broken man now.
Yeah.
And so when he wakes up, and a lot of the times, and like every adaptation, again, we see him ask what day it is, right?
Yes.
And that's solely because he actually does not know what fucking day it is.
Yes, because he wakes up after his bed and he says, I will live, I'll do this stuff. And he doesn't know because he's looking around and he's like, because he after he went to sleep after Marley's ghost, he like sleeps the whole day and then wakes up.
Yeah, he's constant. Every time a ghost would leave, he would sleep for another 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right, essentially, or he would have been asleep for 24 hours and have woken up right before the ghost shows up.
Yeah, here's what it says. I don't know what day of the month it is, says Scrooge. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. Never mind, I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello, whoop, hello here. And he's like running, he's like, here's the church bells. And he sees the boy like, what's today? Called downward to a boy in Sunday clothes. He's like, what is today? What is today? Well, it's Christmas Day. And that is in like all caps in the thing. He's like, Christmas Day, I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. But it wasn't really. But it was?
I have
no idea.
Right? I have no idea.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but it does.
It does because he has been put back in a position where it's no longer too late.
Yeah. It's no longer too late. He can now do all the things that he wants. He can now go participate in the party that he
missed
couldn't.
the first time. Yeah.
That he literally watched the party go on, the festivities, and he himself was getting into and realizing how fun this can be, spending time with friends and family.
Yeah.
And then he missed it. And so
Yeah.
now he hasn't. And now he's like filled with joy and just overcome with relief. And he's about to go do all the things he should have.
Yeah. So he goes to the boy and is like, go, like he said, like, go buy the biggest goose in the window and deliver it here. And if you come back quickly, I'll give you this. And if you come back faster, I'll
Yeah,
give
well, it's like, if you come back within 5 minutes, I'll give you half a crown. And the boy runs off. And he's like, if he comes back even sooner, then I might just give him a whole fucking crown.
Yeah. He's like, I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. And so he sends it to them, and he goes to his
He goes to his nephew's house.
goes to his nephew, and he's like, "Oh, I'm here to celebrate with you." And the nephew and his wife were like, "What? Yeah, of course." And yeah, it's funny because it's like all the people were pouring in as he had seen them with a ghost. So it's literally the party he missed. He gets to go to now, and that's
why I am.
Yeah,
That's why now I'm like, it really like no adaptation has done it justice. Because they always just, it happens it happens on Christmas Eve. We're just going to rush through it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it misses like a pretty integral message of it being too late.
Yeah. And then he also talks to the gentleman who was like supposed to be collecting. He finds them again, and he's like, come to me, I want to donate. I want to give. I want to give. I want to give. So it's like, it's literally all of those things. And he goes and sees his nephew, and then we get the next day is when
Cratchit shows up.
Yeah, he's at the office early the next morning. Oh, he was early. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. And that was the thing he had his heart set upon. He did. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No, Bob. A quarter past. No, Bob. He was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. As Bob comes in, hello, growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, as near he could feign it. What do you mean by this coming on this time of day? I'm sorry, sir, Bob said. I am behind time. You are? Yes, I think you are. Step this way, sir, if you please. But it's only once a year, sir, pleaded Bob. It will not be repeating. I was making merry yesterday. Now I'll tell you what, my friend.
I'm running late because somebody dropped off this fat fucking goose
crazy turkey
that we had to cook.
We had to cook like it took forever. Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, he continued, leaping up to his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back. And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary. Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. He had a momentary idea of knocking Scrooge down with it, holding him down, and calling to the people in the court and for help and a straight waistcoat. A Merry Christmas, Bob! A merrier Christmas, Bob, than I have given you. For I will raise... And then he's like, wait, what? I will raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Bob, make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit. So he doesn't make him his partner.
No.
But he's like, well, he will discuss your affairs. So it is the possibility that Cratchit does become
Eventually,
the partner.
right.
Yeah. And then that's the thing. It's like, oh, he became like, Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, a good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other city or town or borough in the good old world. Some people were like, would laugh and make fun and be like, what? He's ridiculous. But he paid little heed, for he was wise enough to know nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not get their fill of laughter on the onset. And knowing that such would be blind anyway, he thought it would quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes and their grins. He had no further intercourse with the spirits, but lived in total absence principle ever afterwards. And it was always to him that he knew of how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that truly be said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.
Love it.
Love it.
Nothing's done it justice.
No, it's great. I was reading up apparently that line where it's like, oh, Tiny Tim, who did not die. That was not in the first printing. That was added later. Or no,
Like,
it wasn't in the first written manuscript. It was added in the printing
Yeah,
process.
people were. I bet like people who like the editors and proofreaders and just like,
So-
what happened to Tiny Tim?
Hey, Chuck.
Hey,
Chuck.
what happened to him?
Does Tiny Tim die? No, Scrooge
No,
changed
of
his
course
ways,
not.
so of course
Can
not.
you please
Can we
specify?
that? I think maybe we need to specify. Can we just? I think you need to say it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You say Scrooge was good and kept. We need to talk. Okay, no, okay, yeah.
Let's do it. All right.
All right, Tiny Tim, who did not, and the not is capitalized, which really does make it feel like it was an editor's note. Who did not die, for the record. But yeah, it's great, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see all the ways this story has done. There are several of these adaptations we have seen in the past, but some of them are going to be brand new to us, and likely maybe brand new to you, our listeners. So thank you all so much for joining us on this first chapter. We look forward to being back tomorrow.
And thank you guys so much for joining us. This was a blast.
Wonderful. An extra big thank you to our God tier level patrons, Tim O'Connor and the Crystal Con Man. You don't need ghosts to visit you to make you change your ways. You're already cream of the crop, top tier. Keep Christmas in your hearts all year long.
Truly. Merry Christmas, everybody.
See you tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this special bonus episode of Muses of Mythology. If you liked what you heard, you should check us out on Patreon.
We'll be doing 11 more episodes on adaptations of A Christmas Carol in the next 11 days. You know, the 12 days of Musemas.
This is our 12-part daily series, so over on Patreon, we will have now until Christmas Eve episodes coming out every single day. I want to sidebar real quick. Yes, we are aware that technically the 12 days of Christmas follow Christmas, being the first day of the festival through Epiphany, but
Where's the fun in that?
where's the fun in that? Get in the holiday spirit, you Scrooge.
Come on. I mean, it's like, I'm excited about it because we'll be doing like movies, musicals, you know,
Comics.
TV shows, comics. Like, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited. I really hope to see you guys there.
Yeah, this is just a way of us saying, hey, thank you so much to our patrons for making this year spectacular, and you can still join in on the fun and get that thank you too.
And wouldn't you know it, it's available to all tiers. So even our $1 tier. Like, I mean, honestly, like, we just want to say thank you to everybody there to support us. So we're both excited about it, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Patreon.com/Muses of Mythology. We'll see you over there.
Merry Christmas.
And happy holidays.